I built my entire career on a lie. Not a huge, dramatic lie. Not something criminal. Just a quiet, polished, perfectly curated version of myself that fit the industry I worked in. The kind of lie you tell so often it starts feeling like the truth. For 7 years, I let everyone believe I was straight. And the worst part? I got really good at it. My name's Malcolm, and I work in sports media. On-air stuff. Interviews, commentary, the occasional sideline reporting gig. It's the kind of field where charisma matters, image matters, and whether people admit it or not, being the relatable straight guy still opens more doors than anything else. Early in my career, I watched a talented reporter quietly disappear after he came out. No scandal, no controversy, just fewer opportunities, fewer calls. Suddenly not the right fit for certain locker room interviews. I was 23 and terrified, so I adapted. I laughed at the right jokes. I nodded when coworkers rated female athletes during after-work drinks. I invented ex-girlfriends, gave them names, backstories, breakups. I even brought a female friend as my date to a company gala once. It was exhausting, but it worked. Promotions came. Screen time increased. I built a following. I became Malcolm Hayes, the golden boy of post-game coverage. And somewhere along the way, pretending stopped feeling temporary. Until I met Jasper. The first time I saw him, I assumed he was exactly like the rest of us. Clean-cut, broad-shouldered, easy smile. He had that effortless confidence athletes seem to carry even after they retire. He'd just been hired as a performance analyst, former minor league baseball player who pivoted into sports data and strategy. He walked into the production meeting like he already belonged there. "Malcolm, right?" he said, extending his hand. His grip was firm, his eyes steady, not overly friendly, just present. "That's me," I replied, giving him the polished on-air smile I'd perfected. Up close, he was even better looking than I'd registered from across the room. Dark hair, slight stubble, strong jaw. The kind of guy who probably had girls hanging off him at every team party, which meant he was absolutely not safe to think about in any other way. We started working together almost immediately. On-air chemistry tests, panel discussions, pre-game breakdowns. And the thing about Jasper was he was sharp, quick, calm under pressure, and annoyingly natural on camera. Viewers loved him, so did I, but I kept it professional, friendly, surface level. We'd grab coffee between rehearsals, talk about travel schedules, complain about network executives. He'd mention women occasionally, never in detail, but enough to check the straight guy box. I did the same. It became this quiet dance. One night after a late broadcast, a bunch of us went out for drinks. Standard team bonding thing. Loud bar, sticky tables, everyone decompressing after a chaotic doubleheader. I was 2 beers in when one of the producers nudged Jasper. "So, man, you seeing anyone?" Jasper shrugged, taking a slow sip of his drink. "Not seriously. Plenty of options though, huh?" Another guy joked. Jasper smirked. "Guess I can't complain." Everyone laughed. I laughed too, but something about his tone felt rehearsed. Not fake exactly, just measured. Later that night, I ended up next to him at the bar while everyone else argued over fantasy league stats. "You hate these conversations too, don't you?" I muttered. He glanced at me, one eyebrow slightly raised. "What conversations?" "The whole, who are you sleeping with competition." He studied me for a second longer than necessary. "Yeah," he said quietly. "It gets old." There was something in the way he said it. A crack in the armor. I felt it in my chest. We didn't talk about it again. Not that night. Not for weeks. But after that, I started noticing things. The way his eyes lingered sometimes. Not on women. On men walking past. Subtle. Almost invisible. The way he dodged specifics when coworkers asked about dates. The way he never actually brought anyone to events. It mirrored me, and that realization scared the hell out of me. Because if Jasper was pretending too, then he wasn't just some harmless crush. He was dangerous. The tension built slowly. Shared hotel bars during away games. Long Uber rides back from stadiums. Private production meetings that stretched a little too long. Then came the night everything shifted. We were in Chicago covering playoffs. The crew was exhausted. Most people went straight to their rooms after the broadcast. Jasper knocked on my hotel door around midnight. "Mini bar raid?" he asked, holding up 2 tiny bottles like a peace offering. I should have said no. Instead, I stepped aside. He sat at the edge of the bed. I took the desk chair. Neutral distance. We talked about the game at first, then about career plans, then about burnout, and somehow about fear. "You ever feel like you're performing even when the camera's off?" he asked. My stomach tightened. "Comes with the job." "That's not what I meant." The room felt smaller suddenly. He was looking at me directly now. No smirk, no polish. "Sometimes," he said carefully, "I feel like I'm living 2 separate lives, and if either one slips, everything crashes." My heartbeat was loud in my ears. I could have played dumb. I didn't. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I know exactly what you mean." Silence. Heavy. Electric. He stood up slowly, took a step closer. "Malcolm," he said softly. That was the first time my name sounded like that coming from him. Not professional. Not friendly. Personal. And in that moment, I realized the truth wasn't just that Jasper might be pretending too. It was that if he was, then falling for him could cost me everything. And I was already in too deep. I didn't sleep that night. After Jasper left my room. After that almost touch turned into him stepping back like we'd both nearly crossed a live wire. I just lay there staring at the ceiling. The next morning on set, everything looked the same. Cameras, cables, producers yelling countdowns. On camera, we were flawless, teasing each other, seamless banter. Viewers started commenting on our chemistry. Off camera, it was quieter, charged, careful. We never talked about Chicago. Not directly, but we started finding excuses to be alone. Late night editing reviews that didn't need both of us there. Gym sessions at weird hours when no one else from the crew showed up. Long walks back to hotels after team dinners. And every time, it felt like we were circling something. One night, after a particularly intense live debate segment, we ended up on the rooftop bar of our hotel in Denver. Just the 2 of us. The city lights below. Cold air cutting through the tension. Jasper leaned against the railing, hands shoved in his jacket pockets. "You ever think about what happens if someone finds out?" he asked suddenly. I didn't have to ask what he meant. "Yeah," I said. "I think about it constantly. And I like my job." He let out a quiet breath through his nose. Not quite a laugh. "Same." There it was again. That confirmation. Not loud. Not dramatic. But clear. "Same." "You ever dated anyone in the industry?" he asked carefully. My pulse spiked. "No." "Because you didn't want to risk it?" "Because I couldn't afford to." He turned toward me then. "I dated a guy in the minors," he said. Briefly. The words hit like a jolt of electricity. "You did." He nodded once. "Teammate." We were careful. Too careful. It turned into paranoia instead of anything real. "What happened?" "He got traded. Probably for the best." There was something in his voice. Regret. Maybe relief. "I told myself I'd never do that again," he continued. "Never mix career and whatever this is." "Then why are you here?" I asked before I could stop myself. He stepped closer. "Because pretending is exhausting." His eyes locked with mine. "And you get it." That was the moment everything became real. Recognition. We were the same. 2 men who'd built careers on carefully managed illusions. 2 men terrified of losing everything we'd worked for. "You know this can't go public," I said quietly. "I know. And if it goes bad, it won't." "You don't know that." He hesitated. "No," he admitted. "I don't." That honesty almost undid me more than confidence would have. And this time, when his hand reached for mine, I didn't pretend it was an accident. Our fingers laced together. Just for a second. It was ridiculous how something so small could feel so monumental. My heart was pounding like we were doing something illegal. Maybe we were. "Tell me to stop," he murmured. I should have. I really should have. Instead, I stepped closer. That first kiss wasn't dramatic. No sweeping music. No fireworks. "This changes things," I said. "Yeah. Are we stupid?" "Probably." We both laughed softly, but neither of us let go. The truth was, we weren't just risking office gossip. We were risking reputations, contracts, access to locker rooms, endorsements. Sports media wasn't openly hostile. It just wasn't safe. Not yet. And the worst part? I'd spent years building Malcolm Hayes. Confident, straight, marketable. Letting that image crack now could undo everything. The next few weeks felt like living with a secret buzzing under my skin at all times. On air, we were sharper than ever. Off air, we barely touched. No lingering hands, no risky glances when anyone else was around. But in private, it was different. Text messages sent late at night from opposite ends of hotel hallways. You still awake? Yeah. Good. We were in Dallas. Long day. Back-to-back segments. The crew went out. I claimed exhaustion and headed to my room early. An hour later, there was a knock. I knew it was him before I even opened the door. Jasper stood there, hands in his pockets, jaw tight like he was arguing with himself. "I won't stay long," he said immediately. "Okay," I replied, stepping aside anyway. The door closed behind him with a soft click that felt louder than it should have. For a second, we just stood there. Then he exhaled. "This is a bad idea," he said. "Yeah, but you're still here. So are you." That earned a small smile. We sat on opposite ends of the bed like two teenagers pretending we weren't aware of what the other was thinking. Talked about nothing. Travel schedules. Producer who drove us both insane. Eventually, the silence stretched. "Do you ever wonder who you'd be if you hadn't started pretending?" he asked. The question hit harder than I expected. "All the time," I admitted. "But I don't know if that version of me would have made it this far." He nodded slowly. "I think about that guy I dated," he said. "Not because I miss him, but because with him, I didn't have to perform." The word landed between us. Perform. That was exactly it. "Malcolm," he murmured, voice low. "We need rules." I swallowed. "Yeah. No work events. No staff parties. No phones in the room." "Agreed. And if either of us wants out, no questions. No drama." That one stung. But I nodded. "Okay." Because the truth was, we both knew how fragile this was. What we didn't say out loud was the part that mattered most. That neither of us wanted to be the first to walk away. From then on, we became experts at hiding. Separate arrivals. Separate departures. Different hotels sometimes if it looked suspicious. We were careful with glances, with tone, with distance. But behind closed doors, we were ourselves. Jasper was quieter than I expected. Thoughtful. He listened more than he spoke. When he laughed, really laughed, it felt earned. He'd sit on the edge of the bed while I rehearsed lines, pointing out where I sounded stiff. "You do that broadcaster voice when you're nervous," he teased once. "I do not." "You absolutely do." He was right. In return, I was the one he talked to when the pressure got to him. When ex-teammates texted about marriages and kids and normal lives he felt disconnected from. "I don't regret my choices," he told me one night. "I just wish they didn't feel so lonely." I didn't know what to say to that, so I pulled him closer. The danger, I realized, wasn't getting caught. It was getting used to this. Because the more normal it felt, the harder it became to remember why we were hiding at all. And that's when the cracks started to show. Not between us, but between who we were pretending to be and who we actually were becoming. The first real problem didn't come from us. It came from everyone else. When you work in sports media long enough, you learn that nothing stays invisible forever. People notice patterns, energy, chemistry, especially when viewers start pointing it out for you. "You and Jasper are killing it lately," one of the senior producers told me after a broadcast in New York. "Feels different. More natural." I smiled, thanked him, played it cool. Inside, my stomach twisted, because he wasn't wrong. We were different, not sloppy, not reckless, but there was an ease between us that hadn't been there before. A rhythm that came from knowing someone too well. Later that night, Jasper and I walked back to the hotel together, but not too close, not too obvious. Cold air, hands buried in pockets, the city buzzing around us. "They're starting to notice," I said quietly. "I know," he replied without looking at me. "I heard it too." We stopped at the corner before the hotel entrance. The place where we always split up, pretending we were headed to different destinations even though our rooms were on the same floor. We might need to dial it back, I added. He finally turned toward me. On camera? He asked. Everything. That landed harder than I intended. His jaw tightened. Is that what you want? No, I said quickly. It's what I think we're supposed to want. There it was again. That familiar tug-of-war between survival and honesty. We didn't go to each other's rooms that night. We didn't text either. Felt like a reset. A necessary one. The next few weeks were colder. Professional. Controlled. We still worked together, but the private moments disappeared. No late-night knocks. No quiet conversations after long days. I told myself it was smart. I told myself it was temporary. But something in me started to ache in a way I hadn't expected. Because it wasn't just about missing him. It was about realizing how much of myself I'd started letting exist around him. The version of me that didn't rehearse every sentence. That didn't flinch when a man's hand brushed his. That didn't feel like he was constantly editing himself. Losing that felt brutal. The breaking point came during a studio shoot in LA. Long day. Tight schedule. Everyone stressed. Jasper snapped at a camera operator. Nothing major. Just sharp. Out of character. Later, I found him alone in an empty editing room, staring at a paused frame on the screen like he wasn't really seeing it. You okay? I asked, closing the door behind me. He didn't answer at first. Then, quietly, I'm tired of pretending I don't care. My chest tightened. About what? He looked at me then. Really looked at me. About you. The room felt impossibly still. We said we'd be careful, I said. But even to my own ears it sounded hollow. I know, he replied. And we have been. But Malcolm, I'm not built for halfway. I can't keep acting like you're just a coworker when you're not. I swallowed hard. What are you saying? I'm saying that hiding made sense when this was just something. But it's not anymore. That word again. Anymore. I leaned against the desk, suddenly unsure of my footing. If this comes out, I said slowly, it could wreck us. Not just personally. Professionally. He nodded. I know. And if it doesn't, then we keep lying. The silence stretched between us. For the first time, I let myself imagine it. Not just us, but me. Open. Unedited. No fake girlfriends. No carefully neutral pronouns. The thought was terrifying. And strangely relieving. I don't know how to do this, I admitted. Jasper stepped closer, lowering his voice. Neither do I. But I know I don't want to lose what this is just because we're scared. I met his eyes. For years, fear had dictated every decision I'd made. Who I was, how I spoke, what I allowed myself to want. And suddenly, standing in that quiet room with him, it hit me. Pretending had protected my career, but it had also kept my life painfully small. Let's not make any announcements, I said finally. No grand gestures. A hint of a smile tugged at his mouth. But I don't want to hide from you anymore. His relief was immediate, visible. That's all I'm asking for. When he reached for my hand this time, I didn't hesitate. We still weren't ready to be seen. But for the first time, we stopped pretending with each other. And that changed everything. Once we stopped pretending with each other, it became impossible to ignore how much pretending filled the rest of my life. It showed up in small ways first. The way I caught myself lowering my voice when I talked about weekends. The way I still defaulted to vague pronouns when coworkers asked casual questions. The automatic smile I gave when someone joked about wives or girlfriends. Except now, every time I did it, something twisted in my chest. Because I wasn't just lying anymore. I was actively stepping away from something real. Jasper noticed before I admitted it out loud. We were in Boston, walking back from a late dinner, separate checks, separate walks like always, when he slowed his pace just enough to fall in step with me. You're pulling inward again, he said quietly. I'm fine. He shot me a look. You do that too. The broadcaster answer. I sighed. I don't know how to do this halfway. That's because you don't want to. The truth of it landed hard. I'm scared, I admitted. Not of you. Of what happens if I stop managing everything. He nodded. Me too. Then he surprised me. I turned down a segment today, he said. I stopped walking. What? Why? They wanted me paired with someone else for a while. Said they didn't want us overused together. He shrugged. I could tell what that really meant. My chest tightened. And I said no. Told them I preferred consistency. That's risky. I know. I searched his face. Why would you do that? Because if I'm going to lose something, he said calmly, I don't want it to be you. No one had ever chosen me like that before. Not over comfort. Not over optics. It made my throat tighten in a way I wasn't prepared for. From that point on, the pressure started coming from above. Nothing direct. Nothing obvious. Just fewer joint assignments. Subtle reshuffling. A meeting about brand alignment that made my skin crawl. One afternoon, my manager leaned back in his chair and said, You've built a strong image, Malcolm. Just be careful not to confuse the audience. I smiled, nodded, left the office feeling like I'd been gently warned without anyone saying the quiet part out loud. That night, I went to Jasper's room without knocking. He opened the door, surprise flashing across his face before he pulled me inside and shut it behind me. I don't think I can do this forever, I said immediately. He didn't interrupt, just waited. I've spent my whole adult life making myself smaller so I wouldn't get erased, I continued. But now that I know what it feels like not to, I don't know how to go back. He stepped closer, resting his forehead against mine. Then don't. It's not that simple. No, he agreed. But it doesn't have to be all or nothing either. I pulled back slightly. What does that mean? It means we choose our timing, he said. Our terms, not theirs. I studied him. You're really okay risking this? I already am, he replied. Every day I wake up and choose to be honest with you. That was it. That was the line. I'd always told myself I was pretending for my career. But standing there, I realized something brutal and clarifying. At some point, pretending stopped being about survival and started being about fear. And fear had been running my life for too long. I don't want to come out in a headline, I said slowly. I don't want to be a statement. Then don't be, Jasper said. Just be real, where it matters first. So I started small. I stopped inventing stories. I let silence sit when people made assumptions instead of correcting them with lies. I told one coworker I trusted that I was seeing someone, and didn't change the subject when he asked who. The world didn't collapse, but it did shift. And the most unexpected part? I felt lighter, not fearless, not brave, just honest enough to breathe. Jasper squeezed my hand that night and said, You know this doesn't end with us magically safe, right? I know. And it might get harder. I know. He smiled softly. Still worth it. I didn't hesitate. Yeah. Because for the first time, I wasn't pretending for my career. I was choosing my life. Coming out doesn't always look like a press conference. Sometimes it looks like hesitation, like deleting and rewriting a sentence 3 times before finally letting it stand. It started with a podcast interview. Not even a huge one, just a mid-tier sports culture show that liked to frame things as off the field. They wanted to talk about career pressure, branding, media burnout. Safe topics. I almost canceled, but something in me was tired of dodging. Halfway through the interview, the host leaned back and said, You've always kept your personal life pretty private. Is that intentional? Old Malcolm would have laughed it off. Given the practiced line, just focused on the game. Work comes first. Instead, I paused, long enough that I could feel Jasper's presence in my mind, even though he wasn't there. Yeah, I said finally. It was intentional. The host tilted his head. Was? I could still pivot. Still protect the version of myself that had gotten me this far. Instead, I exhaled. I spent a long time thinking that if people knew too much about me, it would limit where I could go in this industry. So I made myself easy to market. Silence on the other end of the table. And now? He asked gently. Now I'm less interested in being marketable, I replied, and more interested in being honest. It wasn't a declaration. I didn't say the word, but I didn't dodge either. And when the episode aired 2 days later, the internet did what it always does. Speculated, clipped, analyzed. Some comments were supportive. Some were invasive. A few were predictable. But the overwhelming response? Curiosity, not outrage. My manager called within the hour. "What exactly are you implying?" he asked, voice tight but controlled. "I'm not implying anything," I said calmly. "I'm just not pretending." Long pause. "This will change your brand." Maybe it should. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. But I could hear the recalculating happening in real time. That night, I went to Jasper's place instead of the hotel. First time we'd done that publicly. No sneaking through back entrances. No separate elevators. Just normal. He opened the door already knowing. "I heard it," he said. And a slow smile. "I'm proud of you." The relief hit me harder than any backlash could have. Over the next week, something subtle shifted at work. No one confronted me directly, but conversations softened. Assumptions faded. A few people avoided the topic entirely. And then one afternoon, in the middle of a production meeting, a junior editor casually said, "Malcolm, are you bringing your partner to the awards dinner next month?" Partner. Not girlfriend. Not wife. Just partner. The room didn't explode. No one blinked. It was just a word, but it felt monumental. I glanced at Jasper across the table. He didn't smile. He didn't look at me any differently. He just met my eyes steadily. And I realized something important. The fear had always been louder in my head than it was in reality. That didn't mean there wouldn't be consequences. There were already rumors about whether I'd still be trusted in certain locker rooms. A sponsor requested a conversation. One executive suggested I lean into broader storytelling roles. But nothing collapsed. I was still on air, still working, still standing. The real moment came at the awards dinner. Red carpet, flashing cameras, industry press. For the first time, I didn't ask a female friend to be my date. I showed up with Jasper, not holding hands, not making a scene, just walking in side by side. There were looks, whispers, phones subtly raised. But no one stopped us. Inside, under the low lights and polished speeches, Jasper leaned toward me and murmured, "You okay?" I took a slow breath. For once, I wasn't calculating how I was being perceived. I wasn't adjusting my posture or tone or distance. I was just there, with him. "Yeah," I said honestly. "I am." Later that night, a veteran reporter, someone I'd admired for years, clapped me on the shoulder and said quietly, "Took guts. Good for you." Simple. No spectacle. Just acknowledgement. That's when it hit me. I hadn't destroyed my career. I'd reshaped it. And the man standing beside me? He wasn't a secret anymore. He wasn't a risk I was hiding from. He was the person who'd made me brave enough to stop pretending. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't performing. I was living. The weird thing about finally telling the truth is that life doesn't suddenly become perfect. It just becomes quieter, less exhausting. A few weeks after the awards dinner, the dust settled. The headlines faded. The speculation slowed. The network never made a formal statement, just quietly continued booking me like they always had. There were adjustments. I wasn't assigned to a couple of particularly conservative teams that season. A sponsor deal didn't renew. My manager stopped pushing me for certain family image campaigns. But new doors opened too. Different panels. Broader conversations. A feature segment about mental health in competitive sports that I would have never been offered before. And through all of it, Jasper stayed steady. He didn't make speeches, didn't post declarations, didn't try to turn us into a brand. He just showed up. To set days, to dinners, to the grocery store down the block from my apartment where we'd argue quietly about which pasta sauce to buy like any other couple. That normalcy was the part that hit me hardest. Because for years, I'd convinced myself that if I ever stopped pretending, my life would become some kind of public battleground. Instead, it just became mine. One night, months later, we were sitting on my couch. No game on, no scripts open, just silence and the hum of the city outside. "You ever think about how close we came to walking away?" I asked. Jasper glanced over at me. "In Chicago?" "In general." He leaned back, considering it. "Yeah," he admitted. "I thought you'd choose the career version of yourself." "I almost did." He nodded like he already knew. I wouldn't have blamed you, he said. You built something impressive. It's hard to risk that. I studied him for a moment. And you? I asked. Were you pretending for your career too? A faint smile tugged at his mouth. At first, yeah. Baseball culture isn't exactly progressive. He shrugged. But after a while, I think I just didn't know how to stop. That hit home. Because that was the real danger of pretending. Not that you get caught, but that you forget there's another option. I shifted closer, resting my head against his shoulder. You know what the strangest part is? I said. What? I thought falling in love would feel dramatic, like something explosive, risky, and it just feels steady. He laughed softly. That's because we already survived the dramatic part. He wasn't wrong. The hiding, the fear, the almost walking away, that was the hard part. Loving him openly, that part felt simple. Not easy, not consequence-free, but simple. A few months later, during a live segment, a rookie reporter accidentally referred to Jasper as Malcolm's partner on air. There was a microsecond where old instincts flared. Correct it, redirect it, smooth it over. I didn't. I just kept talking. The show moved on. So did I. Afterward, in the hallway, Jasper nudged my shoulder. You didn't even blink. I smiled. Guess I'm done pretending. He looked at me the way he had that first night in Chicago, careful, searching, like he was trying to measure something real. You know, he said quietly, for two professional pretenders, we're not very good at it anymore. Good, I replied, because here's the truth. I didn't lose my career. I didn't become a scandal. I didn't fade away. What I lost was the version of myself that lived in fear. And what I gained was something I hadn't even realized I was allowed to want. A love that wasn't hidden in hotel rooms. A life that didn't require rehearsal. I pretended to be straight for my career. Jasper did too. But somewhere between rooftop confessions and quiet bravery, we stopped pretending. And in doing that, we finally became real.